Ladies...
Apologies, were you having me read? Oh, wait, there it is.
Pardon?
I was unsure if I was reading first or if you...
Oh no, it's okay. I was going to go through it, but we had to begin the show first anyway. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our Black Sunday readings, where we will read for you the creepiest stories that we can find, and we'll play some copyright-free music as well to entertain you. Now, the first story that my dear Wanderer Finn has found is called The True Legend of Friday the 13th, and we will now read it for you, assuming my own music doesn't scare me. I think I shall begin first. Slow as the smoulder of fire igniting in flesh, the skin cracks and dries and powders to ash, incinerating extremities long before flame penetrates to vital systems. The eyes will boil from the skull, and cartilage will melt and run like wax. The insulated brain will be protected all the while, still cognizant of the excruciating agony. Bones will splinter next, molten marrow liquefying like hot lead, before exploding in shrapnel to puncture the insides.
The body will attempt to cool its essential organs by redirecting blood flow to the skin, where it will evaporate great clouds of steaming red. Finally, the heat will become too intense, and the organs start to swell, explode, one by one, sending supernovas of anguish through the dying victim.
I see. The onlookers thought that Grandmaster Jacques de Molay was long dead when dry words spoke out of the inferno for a final time. God knows who is wrong and who has sinned. Soon a calamity will occur to those who have condemned us to death. The legend of Friday the 13th began on October 13th, 1307. The Knights Templar, a prominent Catholic military organization during the Crusades, was betrayed by King Philip IV, who had brought false charges against the Templar in order to seize their wealth. The Templar were arrested en masse, and forced under torture to confess to blasphemous crimes against the Church.
Grandmaster Jacques de Molay was burned alive, but not before he spat the curse of his dying words. Within a year, both Pope Clement and King Philip IV of France, who sentenced the Templar, were dead. The curse did not end with their death, however. A number of Templars made the decision to save their own lives by fabricating lies about their comrades, assisting King Philip in condemning the order. One of these cowards, named Jean Molay, was even richly rewarded Templar author for his false and treacherous testimonies.
I see. Fearing repercussion, Jean Molay fled with his new wealth to Scotland, far enough to escape the punishment for his crimes, but not far enough to be safe from Grandmaster Jacques' final curse. Within a year, Jean would be dead as well, although not before he fathered a son to inherit his legacy.
710 years, since that fateful day, Jean Molay's descendants have since spread across the globe, carrying with them what remains of the Grand. I, myself, am afflicted, and I'm writing this now to warn all those who may also be descendants without knowing it. It will begin on a Friday, October 13th. An itching, burning sensation in your nose. Perhaps nothing more than a cold at first, but wait to act at your own risk. The burning will spread down your chest, making it feel tight and difficult to breathe. You'll feel like you have a fever, and your body will start to feel warm as the blood evacuates your vital organ.
Okay, so once you've reached this point, it's already too late. The fire has lit inside you, and no medicine or artifice will be able to save you from your fate. This phenomenon has been recorded as spontaneous combustion in many accounts across the globe. It'll only be minutes from here before you are reduced to ash, choking all the while on the noxious fumes of your own burning flesh. You who bear this curse have strayed too far from God for him to save you. I don't want you to worry, though, because there is another who listens to the desperation of a midnight prayer. Do not concern yourself with his nature. It is enough to know that you are in need, and he has the power to help. Pray with all your heart as the fire rages inside you, and when the voice answers, you must do as it says.
The voice will tell you what ingredients you need to gather. Blood is common, so it may be wise to have some ready before the symptoms begin. Animal or human sacrifices are less common, but it all depends on the strength of the bloodline which ties you to the Grandmaster's curse. Once you have followed the instructions, you'll notice the pain begin to subside in a few minutes. There will be another presence in the room, though, at this point, but that's an unavoidable side effect of the ceremony.
I see. Do not try to look at the presence. Do not talk to it unless it talks to you, and even then, do not give it information about yourself. If you are careful and lucky, it'll leave you alone. The curse will be lifted, and whatever happens after that, well, at least it won't be happening to you. And that was the first story. Oh dear, I did not change the text. My apologies. That was the true tale of Friday the 13th. Let me remove the text for a moment. This true legend of Friday the 13th. Okay, let me go and update that later. And now we move on to the next pasta. My dear Wanderer, could you tell me what it's called?
One moment. This one looks like it should be decent.
Okay. Never used cheat codes on him.
On a Ouija board. The title was amusing, that's why I chose it.
Okay, I dig that. So here we go. This is never use cheat codes on an Ouija board. Wow, the text just literally fluttered. Okay, I'm scared now. Here we go, I guess. In my hometown, there's a unique shop of oddities called Hexworks that I frequent. And it's an old world boutique that specializes in, niche products that I describe as being, vintage style with a modern spin. Their items include cloaks, pocket watches, lapels, bizarre art prints, lavish jewelry, Victorian home decor, amongst, other curiosities. And let's just say it's a great place to visit if you're ever, putting together some steampunk cosplay, which I do love myself. Hexworks is, without a doubt, my favorite place to window shop, but I rarely leave with anything. The prices are high, and rightfully so, and though I love the selection, I can't really say I need anything they have to offer. It'd be different if I were a, convention goer or financially stable enough to justify such luxury purchases, but alas, I am neither, just an accountant. Instead, I relax in the shop's, tranquil atmosphere and drum up business for them whenever I get the chance to talk about the place. It's a mutually beneficial relationship, really.
One day, however, a new product arrived at Hex, one that I couldn't help but gush over. There, sitting on an easel behind the store's front window, was a large, handmade, one-of-a-kind Ouija board. The woodwork was beautiful and the text was striking. It was crafted so elegantly that I couldn't help but be captivated. I had to know where it came from and how much it was going for. Curious as ever, I made my way into the shop, walked right up to the owner, and inquired about the board's origin. He told me it was a new piece sent to the shop by a friend of a friend who had inherited it from. It was an heirloom that had been in this person's family for many years, passed down from generation to generation. Too spooked by the board to continue the tradition, however, the man donated it to Hex.
The more the owner and I talked about it, the more I wanted the board for myself. I was never big on the whole occult or paranormal, but it was too beautiful a piece to pass up. It was something that I wanted for no other reason than to say I owned it, So it would be a conversation piece and an item that I could proudly show off to my friends and family. The downside, the owner wanted $500 for it. So, after a few rounds of haggling with the owner, we came to an agreement. He would put the Ouija board aside for me, and I would make weekly payments until it was paid off. He even offered me a slight friends and family discount for being a regular at the shop. After all was said and done, I'd be paying about, $432. That was still a pretty hefty price tag, but I was grateful for the compromise and agreed to the conditions. A grueling 9 weeks later, I was the proud owner of my very own spirit board. It came in an equally well-crafted wooden chest, upon which the word Ouija was etched, and along with what was presumably the year it was made, which was apparently 1913. Upon opening it up at home, I noticed a few extras that came with it.
Inside the chest, alongside the board, was an ivory planchette, an empty picture frame, and a small, faded pamphlet titled User Manual. The pamphlet's contents consisted of diagrams and instructions over-explaining the use of the board. It was more or less boiled down to place your hands on the planchette and wait for it to move. What I found peculiar, though, was a section towards the back of the manual with a heading that read, Cheat Sheet.
Okay.
It read like this. Want a simpler way to see your loved ones in the afterlife? Fear not. We have just the solution. Introducing the Ouija board sheet. With this easy-to-follow guide, you'll be able to see those buried from you and know that they're okay. Simply follow these instructions.
Wait, let me do the instructions, because this is funny. Step 1. Place the frame included in your kit directly in front of the board in an upright position. Choose one of the following 29 character sequences and place your planchette over the letters and numbers accordingly. The year in which your chosen loved one was born is represented by the 4 question marks at the start of the sequence. The year in which they passed is represented by the 4 question marks at the end. Please be sure to visualize the person in your mind as you move the planchette across the board. If done correctly, a still image of your loved one should appear within the frame, however briefly. Now, please let me read some of the codes for you. Please do try them and let us know if they work. 4 question marks. ENY 4YSE 7 PM 2 LEA 2 OL 4 ET 3 4 question marks. Another code we will read for you is 4 question marks LT8 AFUE 4 CL8 VAU 18 TLO 4 T 4 question marks. If you do manage to use any of these Game Shark codes on a Ouija board, we are not responsible for what happens to you, but do tell us the results.
Disclaimer, this is not a precise science, and results will vary. Each string of characters works differently depending on the person, time of day, and the area in which you are located relative to the spirit realm. If one sequence doesn't work, fret not. You can always try another. And please bear in mind, this is a one-way window. Your loved one will not be able to communicate with you when their image surfaces. Any attempt to speak with them will be met with silence. Enjoy!
I chuckled at what was clearly an attempt at humor by the maker of the board. Distasteful, perhaps, but it was certainly comical. Now imagine that, entering a code into an Ouija board and receiving a snapshot from the other side. How ridiculous. Still, something about the Ouija board cheat sheet irked me. Was the picture frame's only purpose to accompany the joke? Shouldn't the manual have clarified this a little further, and who exactly was the joke meant for anyway? This board was one of a kind, more than likely commissioned by its original owner. Was such a beautifully crafted piece really meant to be nothing more than a gag gift?
Having a gag myself, I set the thing up, frame and all. Whether it was out of boredom or a desire to prove to myself that the cheat sheet really was a load of malarkey, I decided to follow the instructions to a T. I grabbed a beer, chose a character sequence, and recalled the birth-death dates of my favorite family pet, Scratches. All dogs go to heaven, right?
Mm-hmm.
After placing the planchette over the corresponding characters, I looked up at the frame. I swear I saw a milky white fog manifest behind the glass. No image, just cloudy particles dancing about like dust brushed off an old book. To make sure I wasn't seeing things, I repeated the process, and to my surprise, it happened again. With each subsequent use, the smoky substance grew in visibility. It was still faint, but entirely noticeable.
I see. Several theories swam around my brain. many of which sank into the abyss of my collective thoughts. One, however, kept coming up for air. It was silly, but I kept considering the possibility that maybe, the cheat sheet was legitimate. Crazy, I know, but the prospects of having a truly supernatural artifact were exciting. Even if there was a rational explanation for what I'd seen, I was at least going to have some fun playing around with the thing. And so I took off. I called up my parents and collected the dates of various relatives who had passed away. I told them that I was doing that Ancestry.com thing to learn more about my heritage. Deceptive, yes, but they wouldn't have been so understanding if I told them I was dabbling in the dark arts.
After gathering the information I needed, I reclaimed my seat in front of the board. I'd had a few more beers at this point, so my motor skills were not exactly in perfect working order. Because of this, I messed up the first sequence. Using my great-aunt Linda's birth and death years, I entered the code correctly, save for O. I accidentally placed the planchette over the O in the Ouija logo at the top of the board. What happened next was surprising. I noticed my mistake and expected the frame to remain dormant, but this was not the case. To my astonishment, a clear image came into focus behind the glass. What I saw was the outline of a structure soon on a white, foggy backdrop. As quickly as it came, the image faded out of view, leaving me baffled.
So what was I seeing exactly? A building in the afterlife? Is that where buildings went upon being demolished, or was the next world industrialized much like Earth? Enthralled by the idea of having a peek into heaven's inner workings, I fudged up some more sequences. I plugged in random years, past, present, and future, and then made up my own codes. There's no rhyme or reason to my methods. I was basically punching in random combinations just to see what would happen. I was rewarded with little results. Only a couple of my codes worked, and the images that came were too blurry to make out any discernible features. Despite mostly failing in my endeavors, I kept at it. Sequence after sequence, I continued to move the planchette across the wood. I grew tired, but my curiosity far outweighed my eyelids. Toward the wee hours of early morning, I struck gold. One of my made-up codes worked, giving me a proper glimpse into what comes after.
Clear as day, I saw a bustling street, filled with what I assume were souls of the departed. In addition to people, there were cars, buildings, the likes of which I'd never seen. It was similar to Earth's scenery, but significantly different. I'd found a flood of light and white fog. The landscape felt altogether more peaceful, for lack of a better description. Honestly, it's something I look forward to being a part of in the distance.
Oops, sorry, your mic is cutting out. Sorry, give me a second. I'm going to reread that last part again. Honestly, it's something I look forward to being a part of in the distant future, of course. Yeah, you can try again from after that.
I was satisfied with my find, but I couldn't stop there. Using different variations of the same sequence, I pressed on. To my delight, I was greeted with more and more images of the afterlife, all of which bore great clarity, allowing me to see even the finest of details. Here are some of the things that I saw.
Skyscrapers far taller than their earthly counterparts, transparent bridges connecting various parts of the heavenly community, bioluminescent trees and wildlife, mostly scattered about, but I did find one large forest, glimmering pools of water around every corner. Strange weather patterns. Every now and again I'd see clouds, but they, change colour. Excuse me. From image to image. And with every sequence I found something new and unusual on the other side. I was an explorer of sorts, discovering vast sections of land in an uncharted territory. This was now my hobby of choice. Unfortunately for me, it was one that wouldn't last.
In an attempt to take things a bit further, I grabbed a camera, a pencil. I would record my findings and write down points of interest. I was more or less setting out to make a map of heaven. It would be a tough project, but one I would most certainly enjoy. Now, by this point, it was around 8 o'clock in the morning. I'd been at it for about 9 hours. I was more than ready to take a break and shut eye. I decided it would be best to start my cartography project after a quick nap, but I wanted to try one more sequence before going to bed.
I made up another variation of the jackpot code and entered it into the Ouija board. I then watched, and with bated breath, as familiar white particles came together, like puzzle pieces to form another heavenly landscape. The anticipation was torture. I felt like an addict, biding my time as I waited for the heroin to take effect. I may have been a little obsessed, but at least the way I got my kicks was harmless, or so I thought. Just as I was about to receive my fix, something strange happened. The pieces of the image swirled around at high speed before revealing a blank, dark background. White letters then faded into view, creating a very, very clear message. Stop.
Perplexed, I tried another sequence, then another and another. Each time I was greeted with the same word. I even tried older codes that I knew worked, but to no avail. For an entire hour I tried and tried, begging the board to work again, to restore its supernatural property. Eventually I got one to work, but not in the way that I'd hoped. Upon using the code, old images resurfaced, cycling backwards like slides on a projector. In every one of them, though, something was amiss. It was distant at first, but as the frames cycled through these images, it came closer to the foreground. It appeared to be some sort of shadowy figure, pitch black, faceless, like a black cloak, suspended in the shape of a person.
Within a few moments, things took a turn for the worse. The darkness stayed, but the scenery changed. From the afterlife to this life, I saw still frames of my family and friends here on Earth, the shadowy figure looming behind them. I helplessly watched as it crept up on them, inching closer and closer to contact. I was horrified. Before the figure could reach out and touch my loved ones, the slideshow ceased. For a moment, the frame was empty, void of the horrors that once danced behind its glass. I was granted a breather, but not for long. After another moment or two, one last image filled the frame.
It was me, sitting in front of the Ouija board, just as I was then. I might as well have been staring at a reflection then. Standing directly behind me, however, was the cloaked figure. It reached down, touched the back of my neck. I felt its cold fingers slide across my skin. Breaking free of my initial shock, I jumped and ran for the door. I left my house, tired and terrified, and didn't return until the following day. After everything that's happened, I can only guess that I pissed off some angelic being upstairs by poking around its home. I saw things I never should have been able to see and overstayed my welcome, breaking some sort of divine law in the process. I've since disposed of the board, but my experience stayed with me. I'm always looking over my shoulder and checking on my family and friends to make sure they're okay. So far, so good.
Well, though I'm alive, I can't help but feel I'm closer to death than I've ever been. Yesterday, I almost walked into oncoming traffic. A passenger had to pull me back. A passerby had to pull me back. This morning, I felt the elevator at my work wobble a bit, and I swear it was about to fall. Maybe it's simply paranoia. Maybe I'm just shaken by what I saw and felt. No matter what's going on, I'm going to play it safe from here on out. Moral of the story: don't fuck with the Ouija boards. Ladies and gents, thank you so much. I think that's pretty much all we have time for today. Did not want to cut this short, but I think we're starting to experience some technical difficulties. But we will return next week with more creepy tales to tantalize your darker senses. This has been myself. I'm Chen, and the dear Wanderer Fen is my co-reader. We will see you all on the next one.
Farewell.